Who is the founder of Christianity? Is Jesus the founder of Christianity? Many people are confused to the answer of this question. Many people nowadays agree that Paul is the founder of Christianity. Now, I want to talk about Paul because Paul is the important piece that is missing. Many people have no clue into what is really behind the motive of Paul. Paul is described as Saul. Saul of the Old Testament and Saul of the New Testament, both of them are synonymous. If you look at the lifestyle of King Saul, formerly King Saul, everything you've seen in his life is the same thing you will see in the Apostle Paul's life. Number one thing, they are from the tribe of Benjamin. They're from the tribe of Benjamin, and the symbol is the ravening wolf. Now, I'm going to show you today how Potiphar is a type and shadow of the Apostle Paul. Most people who listen to the videos that I put out have no clue as into what types and shadows really are. A type and a shadow is actually just a picture of something before it actually happens, like Joseph. Joseph was a type and shadow of Jesus. Everything you practically can see in Joseph's life, you can see in Jesus' life. And God set up the Bible this way to guard us from Bible corruption. So when we look in the past and we look in the future, we can say, oh, something is off. Okay, especially when you have authors like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and Paul, and all that stuff. These right here are not like the old pattern. For instance, God gave us the Solomon concept. What is the Solomon concept? That is seen in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 9. The thing that hath been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun. Verse 10, is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? It hath already been of old time, which was before us. So there's nothing new under the sun. Everything you see is something that has already been seen. Now, when we talk about Moses, Moses is a picture of the Deuteronomy 18:18 prophet. He is a type and shadow of Muhammad. Everything, slow of speech, being the prophet that hammered his nation into a chosen people, okay, hammered them in with a law. Both of them done that. Moses and Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon them. And we have Christian scholars who are writing dictionaries right now that will tell you that the only prophet who can be compared to Moses remotely is Muhammad. Peace and blessings be upon him. So I'm getting back to these types and shadows, but you got to understand the Solomon concept. And a lot of these people, their Bible knowledge is not there yet. They don't understand what a type and shadow is. God said, I will raise up for them a prophet like Moses. He didn't just say, I'm going to raise up a prophet. He said, I'm going to raise you up a prophet like Moses. Why? Because what you see in Moses' life, you will see in this Deuteronomy 18:18 prophet's life, whom we believe and know is the prophet Muhammad. Peace and blessings be upon him. Now, getting back to Potiphar. Potiphar was nothing more than a type and shadow of the Apostle Paul, because when you say Potiphar, you're literally saying fur. You're saying fur. You're going into the wolf in sheep clothing. A lot of this stuff I'm bringing out is advanced. Now think about it. Nabal, he was a type and shadow of the Apostle Paul. Remember what he was doing? He was shearing. That means shaving sheep. Shaving sheep. That's going into the fur. This right here indicates this fur is pointing to the Apostle Paul. Now in Genesis 37:36, and the Midianites sold him, Joseph, into Egypt unto Potiphar. Now, let me show you how Egypt is connected to Paul. And this is going to be in the book of Acts. And it's going to be chapter 21. And we're going to go with verse 38. This is what they called Paul. Art not thou that Egyptian, which before these days madest an uproar and leddest out into the wilderness 4,000 men that were murderers? Paul was called a murderer. Paul was a murderer. Paul was a jailer. Okay, Paul is the wolf in sheep clothing. So getting back to where I was at, we have a Potiphar who was in Egypt, and we have a Paul who was accused of being an Egyptian. Now we know the latter part of what he said was true, because Paul testifies himself of being in the wilderness before going into Damascus, when everybody was afraid of him. So now, with that being said, I want to go to Genesis 37:36 again. And the Midianites sold him into Egypt unto Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh's and captain of the guard. And this is what Joseph said in Genesis 40:15, for indeed I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also have I done nothing that they should put me into the dungeon. Now Joseph is a picture of Jesus. Jesus was stolen property. The Apostle Paul stole Jesus, just like Joseph was stolen. His brothers stole him and sold him. Now I want to go into Genesis 39:7. And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, lie with me. So Potiphar's wife, which is the church, okay, and Paul says in his own words that Christ is the head of every man. He also says that Christ is the husband of the church, okay, and that the church is married to Christ. He gives us this, and this goes into Revelation when it talks about the marriage supper of the Lamb. He brings out the revelation that Christ is the husband of the church, and the church is the bride. But really, behind the scenes, Paul is the husband of the Christian church, and the church is his bride. Okay, just like Potiphar. Potiphar's wife is looking at Joseph, and she has her eyes set on Joseph. Now, is this Joseph's wife? No, this is not Joseph's wife. This is Potiphar's wife. And it's the same thing with the church. These churches do not belong to Jesus. They belong to Potiphar, aka Paul. Now, his master's wife Potiphar, and she right now is trying to get him to lie with her. Now, Jesus could not lie with the church. He could not be the king of the Christian church. He could not be the Lord of the Christian church. He could not be the husband of the Christian church, because the church is married to Paul. The church is married to Potiphar. And remember, Jesus always says, my Father's house, my Father's house, my Father's kingdom. So what Paul has is he actually has God's church. Okay, he really has God's church. Okay, and he's claiming that Jesus is the Lord of this Christian church, when really he is the Lord of this Christian church. There's a story in 1 Corinthians chapter 5 that will help you. It's a story of an Israelite man in Paul's church being accused of having his father's wife. Now, who has their father's wife right now? Who has it? It is Benjamin. It is Paul. He has the Father's church, okay? Now I want to keep going. Verse 8, but he refused. Joseph refused to lie with her. Jesus can't lie with you. He can't be in Christianity. He can't be in that lie. But he refused and said unto his master's wife, behold, my master wotteth not what is with me in the house, and he have committed all that he have to mine hand. Now, what I want to do is to help some people out. I want to go to another translation, because a lot of times when we read the King James, a lot of us do not get that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to another translation and I'm going to read that. I love to go to Bible Hub when I do this. So I'm going to read the New Living Translation. But Joseph refused. Look, he told her, my master trusts me with everything in his entire household. Now, to go to the New King James, it reads, but he refused and said to his master's wife, look, my master does not know what is within me in the house, and he has committed all that he has to my hand. So that word wota in the King James Bible literally translates to know. All right. So now we're going back to this passage. Verse 8, but he refused. Okay. Jesus refused to be a part of the Christian church. He refused. And he said unto his master's wife, he said unto the church, behold, my master wotteth not what is within me in the house, and he have committed all that he have to my hand. Verse 9, there is none greater in this house than I, neither hath he kept back anything from me but you. Okay, because thou art his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? So how can Jesus be a part of this bride when this bride belongs to someone else? And the Father is keeping Jesus from being a part of this Christian church. You're going to see everything that's in the life of Joseph in this story is pertaining to the life of Jesus. Jesus could not be a part of the Christian church. Question for you who disagree. Did Jesus ever use the word Christian? No. Did Jesus ever say you was going to be called Christian? No. Who said that? Okay. Paul points out that the church is to be called saints. And the church was first called Christians in the book of Acts during Paul's time reigning. Okay. Paul was the husband and is the husband of the Christian church. Going back to Genesis 39 and 10. And it came to pass, as she spake to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her. That's just like the church today. Many people are speaking to Jesus day by day by day, and Jesus is not listening to you. Okay? He's not. That he hearkened not unto her to lie by her or to be with her. And it came to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business. Remember, Jesus said, I must be about my Father's business. Okay? Jesus wasn't trying to set up nothing on his own. Paul did that. Jesus was in submission to Allah. He was in submission to the Father, to God Almighty. Paul was doing his own thing. Paul was trying to be the Father. Paul was setting up these churches, and he was including Jesus in it. He was making Jesus the Lord of this church when Jesus was nothing more than a Joseph. He had nothing to do with Potiphar's wife. Going on. So he went into his house to do some business, and there was none of the men of the house there within. And she caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand and fled and got him out. Now, I did an illustration with my wife, and I had on my robe, and I had my back towards her, and I told her to grab my robe, and I ran. I walked off, got from her. Basically, was what I'm saying. I just kind of walked a little fast, like running, and my robe stayed in her hand. And I asked her, I said, babe, who is that? I said, who does the church really have? And then she began to think, and I began to question her. I said, babe, who does the church have? Okay. I asked her, and I said, who is that? And then it dawned on her, and she said, Paul. She caught it. The church don't have Jesus, okay? Just like Potiphar's wife, she did not have Joseph. She wanted to have Joseph. She was talking to Joseph day by day. But in all actuality, all she had was his garment. And who is that garment? That garment is the Apostle Paul. That is the wolf in sheep clothing. The church don't have Jesus. And I've been pointing this out, and I'm going to continue to bring this out. And if you brave enough, you can debate and we can have a discussion about this. The church don't have Jesus. The church has Paul. Now, I'm going to keep going. She saw that he had left his garment in her hand and was fled forth. Now, long story short, she starts accusing him of rape. She accuses him of rape. Now, I'm going to show you something in your Bible. It's going to be in the book of Judges. I know a lot of you Christians don't like to go in the Old Testament, but let's go to Judges. Let's go to Judges, and I'm going to read this story. It's going to be in the book of Judges, chapter 19. And I want to go to let me see. Verse 25. And it reads, but the men would not hearken to him. Now, this is the Benjamites. The tribe of Benjamin was knocking on this man's door, and they wanted to have sex with the man in the house. Okay. They wanted to have sex with a man. Okay. And what happened was this guy that had a concubine, he said, look, here's my daughter. Here, she's, my concubine. I will bring her out to you. But don't do this wickedness. Don't try to be with this man. I'll give you my concubine. So what the tribe of Benjamin did, and that concubine is a symbol of the church. In Paul's own words, he's telling you, okay, this woman is being abused. And I'm going to read that. But the men would not hearken to him. So the man took his concubine, which is the church, and brought her forth unto them. And they knew her, that's intimately, and abused her all the night. So this is a picture of the church who is under abuse. Now, if you have a 66 books Bible, if you have a Bible if you have a Bible that doesn't have the Apocrypha, rather, and it has 66 books, if you type in the word abuse, the only people it's going to bring up is either King Saul of the Old Testament or Saul of the New Testament, proving that the church right now is being abused, and the church is being abused by the teachings of Paul. Okay, he's the wolf in sheep clothing. So what's going to happen is, until the day spring, because these men abused her all the night until the morning, indicating that there's going to come a time when the church is going to break free from the abuse of Paul. Paul is going to be forced to let the church go, just like Pharaoh. Okay, Pharaoh did not want to let God's people go. Okay, and I'm telling you, this is so important, knowing the wickedness of Paul. He's an important piece of the puzzle. Pharaoh also played a type and shadow of Paul. He did not want to let God's people go. He did not want to let God's people go until the killing of his firstborn. Now, the firstborn is going into Jesus. There's coming a day when Jesus is going to come onto this earth. He's going to come and he's going to destroy the cross, and he is going to die. And the Bible literally is, let me tell you something, in total agreement with the Quran. Okay, and the Quran is literally saying that the Jews and the Christians will not believe in Jesus until after he dies. And through the types and shadows, okay, that I'm bringing out, you can see that the Bible is in agreement with what the Quran is saying. There's coming a day when Paul is going to be forced to let the church go. Let me tell you something. Christianity is the strongest religion in the world. The strongest military in the world is the United States of America, and they're Christian. There's coming a day when the house of Saul, which I call Christianity, is going to be so weak that the house of David, which I call the house of Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, Islam is going to totally dominate. And right now, Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world right now. So there's coming a day when Paul is going to be forced to let the church go. And I'm going to read that. But the men would not hearken to him. So the man took his concubine and brought her forth unto them, and they knew her and abused her all the night until the morning. And when the day began to spring, watch this, they let her go. Now, I'm praying for that day. I'm praying for the day that Paul lets go of the church, that the teachings of Paul are demolished. And they're being demolished right now because we are bringing the true balance of Jesus Christ, okay? And we're bringing out the truth that he didn't die yet, okay? So the house of David, the house of Islam's teachings is going to destroy the teachings of Saul, Christianity. And there's coming a day when Jesus will return, the Messiah who has been assigned to clean up this mess, there's coming a day when the first thing he will destroy, according to the Hadith, is the cross. There's coming a day when he will destroy Christianity in person. It is Paul's religion. It does not belong to Jesus. It belongs to Paul. So I brought that out, and I also want to tell you something. The self-appointed apostle, Paul, okay? This man, according to the Bible, no one appointed him to be an apostle in those words, okay? He never met Jesus personally, okay? Like the disciples. Rather, he said he heard a voice and he's seen a light. He has no weight like Peter, James, and all of those whom Jesus actually dealt with, okay? He was born Saul in Tarsus and was probably a Roman citizen, and this man was persecuted, supposedly, for breaking his followers from the Jewish law. Now, there's other things about Paul, and I can continue to go into. I can bring out the similarities of him and John the Baptist. John the Baptist was in the wilderness. Paul was in the wilderness. Paul had a belt. John had a belt. Paul was in the relationship ministry. John the Baptist died in the relationship ministry. They both were beheaded. Okay. And according to Jesus' own words, John the Baptist was greater than Jesus, from his own words. Jesus said it. No one is greater than John. He was more than a prophet. And according to the New Testament, Paul is the Jesus of the Christian church. He is the Jesus of the New Testament because he is the rabbi of the New Testament. Okay. He gave us 13 letters, supposedly. Okay, so although he says Jesus is Lord, really he is the Lord of the Christian church. He teaches his followers to eat food sacrificed to idols, which is something Jesus spoke against in the book of Revelation. Okay, Jesus said, call no man your father. In Islam, God said that Muhammad is not your father, but Paul calls himself the father in 1 Corinthians chapter 4, 15. Read it for yourself. You will see that the letters of Paul went against the teachings of Jesus. Not only did his letters go against the teachings of Jesus, but his letters went against the teachings of James. And to this day right now, the letters of Paul is in direct opposition to the house of David, which is Islam. So I just wanted to bring that out there to you. I wanted to show you these types and shadows, and you'll see, you're going to see, I'm not threatened. I'm not worried. I know for a fact that the truth is going to get out, that people are going to see, and many people are waking up right now. If you was to Google false apostle, the first thing that's going to pop up is Paul. Many Christians, okay, actually call themselves Christians without accepting Paul. That's sad. It's sad because really Paul is the one who created Christianity. He is the founder of the Christian church. So I'm not worried. Many people are going to wake up and they're going to see that Paul was the wolf in sheep clothing. They're going to see that Jesus had nothing to do. He had nothing to do with the Christian church, just like he had nothing to do with Potiphar's wife. He was being accused of messing with her. But Jesus had nothing to do with that Christian church. As a matter of fact, Jesus is in the Quran. And he said, okay, that he will testify against those. He will be a witness against those who associate him with God. He denied ever being called God, and he denied anyone calling his mother God. Okay. Jesus is going to be a witness against you in the last day. There's no scripture verbatim where he's telling you to worship him. There's no scripture verbatim where he's telling you to worship his mama. Okay. All those things the Christians will be held in, they're going to be responsible for. They're going to be accountable for it, rather. Okay. So I just wanted to bring that out. I don't have any books in front of me. I'm just all throwing all this stuff off the top of my head, just throwing a little bit out there so you'll see that the Apostle Paul is the wolf in sheep clothing. Everything you can see in King Saul's life, you can see in the new King Saul's life. Everything from bringing up dead, prophet. That's exactly what Paul did. He wanted to bring up a dead prophet, which is Jesus. King Saul wanted to bring up Samuel, okay, which was a prophet. Okay. Paul, he was killing Christians. Then he became a Christian. Then we have King Saul. He was killing witches. Then he went start listening to witches. So that's all I have for you. I will be doing I got a debate scheduled. A brother said that he was going to have a debate with me today. Actually, I told him to call me Sunday, and he hasn't called me Sunday. And so I sent him a message. I'm going to see if did he respond? Check and see if he responds. A lot of the time when I get on here, I'm just talking and waiting for these people to actually keep their word and get into this debate. But yeah, who is the founder of Christianity? Paul. Paul is the founder of Christianity. He is the founder of Christianity. He is Potiphar. He is Potiphar, and he is abusing the church. Think about it. He regulated marriage laws. God never once stopped a man from having multiple wives. Okay, and according to the Torah, the only ones that were supposed to regulate how many women they supposed to have was the kings of Israel. And even they did not adhere to those laws. But multiple wives was something that God allowed the children of Israel to have. Paul comes on the scene as the rabbi, and he prohibits that. God tells us to be fruitful and multiply, replenish the earth. Jeremiah tells us that the same thing. He tells us the same thing in Jeremiah chapter 29. He says, in your captivity, take wives, okay? So that you don't diminish. Paul is saying he wants everybody to be single just like him. Okay, so you'll see that the imposter is the apostate, is the self-proclaimed apostle Paul. You're going to see that many people, they do not get it yet, but it might not be time for you to see it yet. It might not be time for you to see it yet, because truth before it's time is like error. Okay. And some of you might be getting confused. You might be like, oh man, this dude is teaching false and all that. But some people are considering it. Trust me, I know. People are reconsidering. And a lot of people already was sketchy about Paul's letters anyway. So there's time for one another to wake up. There's a time set for you to wake up, and there's a time set for another person to wake up. You might not wake up yet. You might be stubborn, okay? You might be stubborn. But other people, they're getting it, and they're waking up, and they're realizing, wow, there's so many discrepancies with the teachings of Paul. How could Jesus be the creator when God is the creator all by himself? Okay? Jesus never once said he created the world. He never once said that all that stuff came from your boy Paul. All right, so Assalamu alaikum to my brothers and sisters that are in the truth.